You know, our next reader was supposed to be Alia Volz. She was supposed to be that. The founder of Literary Deathmatch, among other things. But I don't think that's who showed up today. I think we need to cue the music, folks. Just cue the music.
I'm the kind of guy you could put the whole world around and I can support every part of it. I'd brag in an interview before flying into Dallas to wrestle Chris Adams or Gino Hernandez, Portland to work with Rip Oliver or Playboy Buddy Rose, or Mobile to battle Robert Furler or Jimmy Gordon. I'm not a movie actor, but I'm better looking than most of them. I'm not a rock star, but I can dance and I can sing my fanny off. I just happen to be a kiss-stealing, wheeling, dealing, limousine-riding, jet-flying son of a gun that you know to be, woo, the world's heavyweight wrestling champion, customly called Slick Ric Flair. Gonna tell you a story. An unusual situation occurred in the Dominican Republic, where Colin Jovica promoted with a fellow named Jack Veneto. The first time I traveled there, I didn't realize that I needed a passport. Since I didn't have one with me, people had to get paid off in order to get me into the country. I checked into the Sheraton Hotel in Santo Domingo, feeling a little disoriented because nobody spoke English. I was just settling into my room when George Napolitano, the wrestling magazine photographer, called. "Hey, Rick," he said in his Brooklyn accent. Yeah. Look out the window. Look out the window. Pulling open the window shade, I saw about 30,000 people going wild in the street. A guy who looked like a midget was jogging over a bridge with the crowd cheering and jogging alongside him. It was like a scene from Rocky. "Who the hell is that?" I asked George. "That's the guy you're wrestling tonight." Apparently, my opponent, Jack Veneto, was training for the biggest match of his life. Yeah. That's twice. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep losing it. Oh yes, where the hell? A chance to bring glory to the Dominican Republic by winning the most prestigious wrestling championship in the world. People had poured into the streets from all over the country. My God, it was unbelievable. When I arrived in the arena, hordes of people were battling police outside. The promoters had oversold the building 2 or 3 times over. If the capacity was 10,000, there were 20,000. 20,000 fans in the street. People who had purchased tickets and couldn't get in. In Santo Domingo, Ric Flair versus Jack Veneno was bigger than the Super Bowl and the World Series. This was life and death. Our finish was an example of what wrestling people call a Broadway. Veneno had me in a sleeper hold. The referee picked up my arm and it wilted. He picked it up a second time and it flopped again. He picked it up a third time, and just as my arm fell to the side, indicating I was truly unconscious and Veneno had won, the bell rang. What followed was a full-scale riot. People were throwing chairs and fighting with the military police, and they didn't know the actual finish. The spectators believed that Veneno had become the NWA champion, and they were jubilant. I can't imagine what it would have been like if they were upset. Everyone wanted to get into the ring to congratulate him. I didn't want to spoil anybody's fun, so I just left the championship belt in the ring. If Veneno felt like holding it over his head and pretending to be the champion, that was fine with me. I decided to leave the championship belt in the Dominican Republic. Jack Veneno tried to give it back to me in the dressing room. I said, forget it, I'd rather leave alive. No one in the United States knew about the apparent title switch. It was never acknowledged in the NWA records, but the house had been so good that Colon and Javica asked me to return. Don't worry, they swore, we'll secure you, nothing like that will ever happen again. Okay, I said, but I want to bring Piper with me. The fact that our first match had been a no decision was never reported in the Dominican press, so Veneno entered the ring wearing the NWA Championship belt. Roddy Piper came out with me, waving the American flag and singing God Bless America in a high, obnoxious voice. The crowd was screaming, cursing the United States. It was even louder than the last time I was in that building. It was absolutely fucking crazy. Woo! And I had worked out a finish where I would screw him out of the title. He began crisscrossing the ropes, and when he moved too close to the apron, Piper stuck his hand into the ring and tripped him. There were soldiers all over the building, and a good half dozen of them picked up their rifles and pointed them at Piper's head. This was the spot where I was supposed to cover Veneno and steal the win. But I got so scared that I pulled him on top of me and yelled, "Pin me!" ¿Qué dice? Veneno was confused and began pulling away. I tucked him back toward me and held him over my body so he couldn't move. Then I looked at the referee. "Count!" I screamed. Taking note of the soldiers at ringside swinging their billy clubs at Piper, the ref got the picture and quickly slapped the mat 3 times. Veneno stood up, a little perplexed, while I kept shouting, "Put on the belt, do you hear me? You're the fucking champion! Wear the fucking belt!" Both uniformed and civilian personnel were hurtling through the ropes to go after me. I'm not sure how this happened, but in the middle of the mayhem, invader number 1, my friend Jose Gonzalez, the WWC booker, later accused of killing Bruiser Brody, ran into the ring and managed to rush both Piper and myself to the dressing room. According to the Dominican wrestling fans, Jack Veneno not only defeated Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, but he retained the gold in a rematch. I don't know what local viewers were told the following week when Veneno came out on television without the title, because this time, when he offered me the championship belt backstage, I took it. Woo! Piper and I waited until the crowds disappeared, and in the middle of the night, left the arena in an ambulance. For my effort, I was paid $5 grand. Piper got $500 and a spittoon full of cocaine. The 2 of us retired to a nightclub where I spent half the money I'd just made. A few hours earlier, we were afraid for our lives, but now I was laughing out loud watching Roddy shovel that shit up his nose like Al Pacino in Scarface as the gorillas attack the mansion, mumbling, "This is what I get when I travel with you. You get all the money, and I get this." We killed some poor limo driver in Chicago. Not literally killed him, but our hours didn't help picking us up at 3 in the afternoon and dropping us off at night at 8 in the morning. Poor Dave had been driving around for 3 days when he had a heart attack and died in his sleep the day after we left town. Jimmy Crockett didn't pay for those limos. I did. When the horsemen were running heavy, I ran up an annual bill of $60,000 for limousines alone. If I bought a new suit, I showed it off during my interviews. I remember holding open my jacket for Tony Schiavone, displaying the label sewn into the red lining and saying, "Read it, brother. It says custom made for the world champion, woo, woo, by Michaels of Kansas City." On airplanes, the other wrestlers always wanted to fly with me. They said it made them feel safer. After all, I'd been in one plane crash. What were the odds it would happen again? Before we arrived somewhere, I'd announce our hotel and invite all the ladies. Woo! In Baltimore, St. Louis, Kansas City, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale, it was the Marriott. In Chicago, it was the Bismarck. In Richmond, the Holiday Inn. When we began performing regularly in the New York area, it was always the Helmsley Palace. In Georgia, I'd say to all the girls driving down the I-85 towards Disney World, you needn't go any farther. Just pull into Atlanta. I'll be at the downtown Marriott, and you can ride Space Mountain all night long. Before the Crockett Cup, a 2-day tag team tournament in Baltimore, we rented a penthouse at the downtown Marriott. And I cut an interview inviting all the females between 18 and 28 to a party. No husbands, no boyfriends. And I wasn't joking. We hired a doorman to let the women in and turn their dates away. While the girls hung out with us in the penthouse, dozens of irritated guys were downstairs wandering around the lobby. After a Vegas trip, I got to the airport and realized that I left a $10,000 ring, a 3.5-carat diamond ring, on the 10th floor of the Tropicana. By the time I got back to the hotel, it was gone. In my career, I've lost 2 major rings, a $20 gold piece with diamonds around it, and 3 Rolexes. And if 2 of those watches weren't stolen by girls, I must have been handing out Rolexes as they left. Once, around 4 in the morning, Arden was going through the revolving glass door at the Bismarck and saw a girl coming out in my full-length coat. He spun back outside, grabbed my mink, and managed to confiscate Tully's wallet and ring too. In Norfolk, I hung out at a bar called September's. I was driving into town one day and caught a glimpse of the marquee, Ladies' Night at September's, featuring Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Arn shook his head. "Can't you keep me out of this shit? If my name's gonna be on the marquee, I prefer it be at the arena." But there's a point that I need to make here. I'm not proud of this stuff. I don't want anyone to read one of these anecdotes and think that it's cool to do this to your wife and family. It's great that I've had a wonderful career and more fun than most people could experience in 5 lifetimes. But I was on such a mission to be Ric Flair. That I neglected what was really important. Yeah, that's the important part. Beth has always been my support system, and I'm lucky to be her husband. She didn't deserve to be disrespected by me acting like an irresponsible kid when I was already in my 30s. She's the greatest woman of all time. The greatest woman of all time! Woo! And it's a miracle that I didn't lose her through my own selfishness and stupidity. I was always there monetarily. Yeah. But everybody, including my wife and kids, came second to the business. It's even more important for me to emphasize this now because my younger son is still growing up. If he chooses to fill my shoes by having a strong work ethic, I'll be proud. If he tries to imitate some of my other behavior, I'll be disappointed. I know that my children are going to read this, and I want them to know that at the end of the day, it's your family that matters.